basketball analysis with over 70 years combined experience. This is the Bob Ryan and Jeff Goodman podcast. NBA.
Well, welcome everybody. Bob Ryan, Gary Tangboy with a special guest today, Dick Weiss, an old colleague and friend of Bob's who wrote for the Philadelphia Daily News and the New York Daily News. He's a very long career in the media, just like Bob. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks. And we are here today to talk about the amazing life of Pat Williams, who passed away at the age of 84. And both of these gentlemen were good friends with Pat. Quickly, I'll just say I met him once, and he was infectious. He came in the studio at Comcast Sportsnet, and Tommy was on the set, and he came in with Tommy, and he was just, the guy was a ball of energy. And then as I was reading about him, I could certainly see why he ran 58 marathons in Boston 13 times.
Yeah.
So it was a life well lived. We got a lot of ground to cover from, as Bob told me yesterday, Dick, he was a catcher for Ferguson Jenkins in the minor leagues. And then I first knew of him when he was a general manager in the NBA through Philadelphia, Chicago, obviously the Orlando Magic, and just a life well lived, not to mention having 19 kids, 14 which were adopted. And we all remember the Sports Illustrated picture. So, Bob, I'm going to give the floor to you, and I'm going to let you guys go to talk about your friend, Pat Williams, and what he meant to people and the league.
Well, he meant so much to me because because he was who he was, but I met him my first year in 1969-70, and he was with the Bulls then. And we hit it off. We bonded over baseball. And you made an allusion to the career in the minor leagues as a catcher in Palatka, Florida in 1962 in the Class D Florida State League. And he was the battery mate for the young Ferguson Jenkins. He had been a best baseball player at Wake Forest from the Wilmington, Delaware area, went to Tower Hill, which is a preppy school in Wilmington. And then he went to Wake Forest. Anyway, we hit it off over baseball, even though the professional reason was, basketball. But we maintained this baseball bond for till the day he died, so that was always our big connection. But the guy was just so, you mentioned, a positive force and so infectious and funny. Just just a guy you want to be with. I had, we'll get my favorite story with him coming up, but it was a guy that I just look forward to every meeting, every conversation with him. But what a career! 5 different teams. The one I forget, by the way, is the Hawks, and
right.
The fact that he's the guy that traded Pete Maravich to the Jazz, and that I don't know how that went over too well in Atlanta. But and then of course finally, he was the heart and soul of getting the reason the Magic got created. I mean, they had their owners, but he did all the groundwork, and he was the one who fought and got it done to create an expansion franchise in Orlando. And by the way, till the day he died, he was dreaming of a baseball franchise in Orlando too. So that's an opener.
Dick, your thoughts?
Well, I think he's a guy who was heavily influenced by Bill Veeck, who was an innovative owner with the Cleveland Indians.
Yep.
Really brought in the first black player there. Larry Doby won a American League championship with him. Was really into the carnival barker part of the game. I mean, back then the NBA still was a barnstorming league, and I think halftime was always entertainment. When Pat was in marketing in Chicago, he got into the ring with a wrestling bear. Picked to the wrestling bear.
Did he win?
He lived to tell a story, so I guess that's pretty good. He also gave us Little Arlene, the hot dog queen, yes. Long before Nathan's. She was a professional eater, and he used to bring her in and pair her against 5 or 6 guys, and she'd chew them up. And finally, he was involved with one stunt, which I was actually partially involved with. Pat was the general manager of the Sixers. I was a writer. We were really good friends. He was always looking for new acts. The day before they had a Sunday afternoon game, it was a doubleheader at the Bluster, and they had a 10-year-old kid out there who was a ball handling wizard, and his little brother would introduce him. So I got on the phone with Pat, you got to get this kid down here. You'll love him. You'll love him. You'll love him. As it turns out, the kid's name was Sean Miller, who ended up being a ball handling wizard and is now the head coach at Xavier. He was kind of a poor man's Ernie D, but he was a great ball handler. And his brother Archie would dress up in a tuxedo at age 7 or 8 years old and introduce him. And the thing became such a big hit. The kid actually appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He was so influenced by Veeck. I mean, Veeck gave us the Eddie Goodell story when he was with the St. Louis Browns. And Veeck, this is something I didn't know. Veeck actually came up with the idea of putting ivy on the Wrigley Field walls. I did not know that.
He's the guy he planted the ivy, Dick. He was an adopted son of a nephew or something. Anyway,
he was a popcorn vendor when he first started.
He planted the ivy at Wrigley,
which is pretty amazing. And he actually had one day where they called it Grandstand Manager Day, where he let the fans determine what the team should do by holding up placards. I mean, bunt, steal, walk, take a pitch. I mean, it was crazy. They won that game, by the way, which might tell you more than you need to know about managing. But Pat was great, and I don't think he ever gets the credit he deserves as a general manager in terms of putting together teams. I mean, he inherited a 76ers team that was 9-73. In the next 3 years, he gets Daryl Dawkins through the draft. He beats the Knicks out for George McGinnis, and he gets Julius Erving. And when the Irving thing came up, I still remember him going up and meeting with Fitz Dixon, who was a sportsman who knew very little about basketball, but wanted to own a professional sports teams. And so Pat's making this big pitch. We got to get this guy, And Fitz Dixon says, "Who's Julius Erving?" As it turns out, they signed him for $6 million. And eventually they add some other pieces. They got Bobby Jones in the McGinnis deal. They get Moses Malone, and they became one of the 3 best teams in the league during the early 80s and actually won a championship in 1983. I mean, it was great. There was so much pressure on that team because they had so much talent, Bob. The first year that Julius was there, they finished runner-up to the Portland Trailblazers in the NBA playoffs. And after the season, Pat decided to come up with a slogan for next year's season ticket campaign. "We owe you one." There was only one problem. The next year they lost to Washington in the playoffs, and so the fans started chanting, "We owe you two."
That's true. It's true. Yeah, you're right. He put that 76er team that 1 year. They're one of the best 1 year teams in the league history. Moses was absolutely unstoppable that year, and what a good group that was. And so he can have that on his resume.
Yeah, Bob. From what I've read, I'm sorry, I just want to get this in there. It's technically, Dick. It says that he was the first general manager in the NBA with the Bulls. Now, obviously, that means title only. So, Bob, did he help define the role?
I didn't know that. That is new news to me that people are making, if that's an assertion, because it seems to me that there were general managers that
maybe it's the title.
Jack Ramsey was a general manager.
Yeah, Jack Ramsey was general manager in the Sixers. Back when he went from St. Joe's, he went to be the general manager, not the coach. he eventually became a coach. So whoever's saying that, I don't know what they're talking about.
Okay.
Maybe he was the first general manager with the Bulls. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
but it seemed to be entitled. So I was just wondering if he helped like define the role, because you guys know better than anybody. Like in the 60s when he became involved, I mean, guys were coaches, drivers of the bus, general managers, they did it all. So it seemed that you got into the 70s, maybe the roles became more defined. Bob, start at the beginning. Talk about his younger days, born in Philly, lived in Delaware, then ended up playing baseball before going to basketball.
Well, his father was friends with, or had been a player, and had been friends with Ruley Carpenter, who owned the Phillies, and so that got him an entree as eventually he was kind of brought up in it. Definitely, there was a sport. He was a sports pup. He was brought up in it, and he obviously took to it. And as I say, think about this. In 1962, he's a catcher in the Class D. That's what we had. For people who don't know, the minor leagues in those days had Class A, B, C, D, Double A, and Triple A. Okay, and there were two major Triple A leagues here: International League and a Pacific Coast League. Three, and American Association. Anyway, this is the world where it existed in 1962. By 1967, when he was 27 years old, he is the Sporting News acclaimed general manager of the year of Class D baseball for the job he had done at Spartanburg, South Carolina. So he went directly from playing into administration because they recognized his talent, his extreme talent. And of course, he was, as Dick said, a Veeck acolyte. He's a Veeck product. By the way, the great slogan that came out of that he used to live by was, Bill Veeck said, "You can't always win the game, but you can always have fun." And that was Pat's guiding credo when he was promoting. But at the same time that he was doing all the promotions that we know, he was about basketball still. He wasn't just some marketing nerd. He was about, as he proved, he assembled a championship team eventually. When I first met him, he was with the Bulls, and he liked gossip. You know that, Dick. He loved and he's the guy that nicknamed Jerry Krause the Sleuth because of his mysterious ways of going about his business. So he's got Jerry Krause on his resume.
Bob, one thing that I should point out, his dad was the baseball coach at Tower Hill.
Okay.
And he and Ruley Carpenter were actually classmates so there was a natural built-in relationship.
I knew there was a Carpenter connection, sure.
Yeah, and the Carpenters owned the Phillies forever, it seemed like, and so it was a perfect fit for him.
Yeah,
and he made the most of every opportunity he had.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Dick, Bob also told me he caught a future Hall of Famer in the minor leagues.
Yeah, Ferguson Jenkins was in Palatka, Florida, and because Jenkins was eventually traded to the Cubs, where people don't realize that he wasn't always a Cub, but he was a Philly originally, and then he went to the Cubs on his way to the Hall of Fame, and launched the Hall of Fame career with the Cubs. Anyway, it's a guy that you make a phone call and it would be a joy. I mean, we'd have so much fun just talking.
How many phone calls did he make to you when he was writing books? He must have written 21 books.
But said
he'd always get in the phone, Gary, and ask you for a story, right, Bob?
Yeah. He was famous for that. Just think about that. In the midst of everything else, he's not using some ghost author. He's doing it. And Dick knows very well, and I know about writing books and what it's like having a giant term paper over your head every day. And he was doing that in the midst of all the other things he was doing, including adopting those 14 kids, which is a whole other story.
There was nothing better during the summer than experiencing a sunny afternoon at the ballpark, or maybe a nice summer evening, catching a ball game live in person, not streaming, not on your phone, not on the radio, not on the TV. I remember driving down from Maine every summer. It was a big deal. We get tickets to see the Red Sox at Fenway Park. And I just remember seeing the green grass as you'd walk up through the tunnel. It was like heaven. And I want you to have the same feeling. So go download the Game Time app and go see a game. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, so it's really easy to use. You can get your tickets faster and easier. Plus, as you get closer to the first pitch, the prices on Game Time actually go down. They have killer last-minute deals. They have the lowest price guarantee, and you can check out the view from your seats. Now, it's really easy. You just go to your phone, you download the Game Time app, you scan it, and you can see there are great seats to the Sox and the Yankees, or if you want that down-home minor league feeling, you can go see the Woo Sox or your favorite minor league club that's close to you. I go to Worcester and Polo Park. It is a great place to take the family to see a game. Very economical, too. Plus, Game Time also has great deals on the New England Revolution and Patriot preseason games. You can get last-minute deals and save up to 60% off on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. You can save even more when you choose the section and you let Game Time choose the seats. You always get the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Now let's talk about Orlando, because I remember when that team first came about, and I said, "There's an NBA team in Orlando." Now, based on what I know of him, and based on when I met him, because when I met him with Tommy, I mean, Tommy's on the set, and Tommy's like, he's, and then Pat comes in, he's walking 3 feet off the ground, and Tommy just gets up and just starts laughing, lights right up, and just like the whole mood changed, so when the guy walked in the room, he was like, he could change the air in a room. So Dick, I'll start with you on this. Based on what I know of him, I don't know if there's anybody else who could have got a franchise in Orlando.
No, I'll tell you what, when he did this, he did have some money backing, but he went out and promised the league that he would get an average of 10,000 fans his first year at Orlando. And he did. I mean, yeah. The one thing you got going, it's a destination town for obviously Disneyland and SeaWorld and right. Some of the entertainment centers. But I think that he saw what could happen if you had people in the city. It's like Vegas, where people were always looking for something else to do.
Right, but as far as getting a fan base, you just don't look at it as a transient town. Season tickets. How do you sell season tickets? How do you that sort of thing?
Well, I think it really helped when they won the lottery and got Shaquille O'Neal.
Huge. Well, it was huge. Yeah. And plus taxes. Players like to live in Orlando.
Oh yes.
Well, the big thing in Orlando was getting an arena and getting it was the city versus the county. That was local politics were huge, and in fact, when they had the groundbreaking for the arena, they literally dug a hole, and county commissioner on one side and the mayor and the people on the other side, and they threw a hatchet down the hole, and they then mutually buried the hatchet physically.
Oh.
And in Orlando, that's how Orlando got the grounds work for the arena. Which they didn't have one. The way that expansion was interesting. In 1986 at the league meetings in Arizona, which I happened to, I covered it. And that's, by the way, that's where I met Mad Dog Russo. He was there covering it for Orlando. He was working radio in Orlando. And he and Pat became lifelong friends too, by the way. And he's in mourning as Dick and I are. So anyway, there were 7 different applicants for potential expansion franchises at the Lunars meeting, and they all came in and made their pitch. Wilt Chamberlain was involved with Toronto, I think. I can still see him standing in the lobby wearing his Alibaba pants. Imagine that, 7 feet tall with the flowing pants.
Oh, I remember he wore them at Bill Russell's thing at the Garden. Well, it looked like a genie.
I'm sure was the spokesperson, and he could be persuasive. Anyway, and then they needed to be persuaded because the stick is thing. Orlando was hardly a glam. You didn't think of it in terms of a sports franchise. That's all. You thought of it in terms of Disney World, and that's it. So anyway, so Pat, they had to literally. I watched it. I saw it. Bury the hatchet. They literally. So somewhere underneath that arena, there was a hatchet.
I actually think they could have won a championship too if Shaq had stayed. He became a free agent at 24. I mean, they had he and Penny Hardaway, who was at the height of his talent at that point.
Yeah.
Well, they made it to the finals, right?
They did Eastern Finals, wasn't it?
No, they got to the finals, and
no, they did.
Hakeem schooled Shaq in that. He really did. Oh, he did. I mean,
Shaq was a baby. I mean, Shaq was a kid.
Shaq was a kid then, and he, and he schooled him, and that was Olajuwon at his prime, at absolute peak, and Shaq was getting his feet wet in the league, and so that's all. All right, I got to tell the story.
Please do.
Right? This is Pat Williams. So it's 1980 at the NBA Finals. His 76ers, having just dispatched the Celtics in 5, Larry Bird's rookie year, were playing the Lakers. And we're in LA, and it's the day of an off day. It's an off day. And there's a morning practice. And of course, we have a 3-hour time difference. So I've gone to practice. I've written already. It's 2:00 in the afternoon, 5:00 Eastern. I'm getting ready to go to the pool. And the phone rings in my room. It's Pat. What are you doing? I'm going to the pool. Now, come with me. We're going to go see Daryl Strawberry. Wait a minute. It was the week of the the baseball draft. Daryl Strawberry had been in Sports Illustrated, I think, Faces in the Crowd or something like that, but he's going to be the number 1 pick. And he's got a game today at Crenshaw High School. So I said, yeah, I'll go with you. I pick him up. He picks me up. We go. And we get to the directions, which, by the way, I have the directions. I forwarded to both of you guys, the actual handwritten directions from Marriott Stationery in 1980, and Pat Williams. So we get to Crenshaw, which is in a middle-class neighborhood in Inglewood, California, middle-class black neighborhood, I have to say, in Inglewood, California. And we get there, and the only other white people are the scouts. And so we're there watching the game. And by the way, you identify without a program, without numbers, you picked out the target just by looking at him, just by his jog was professional. You know what I'm saying? He carried himself as a star, the 18-year-old Daryl Strawberry. So we're sitting in the first row of the bleachers, and it had one of those batting cage deals, permanent batting cage deal on this field that I played. So the scouts went up and all hung out at the batting cage to watch the batting take place. That this is high school. Nobody's yelling at anybody. So they had and the pitcher was a very burly, heavy-set Latino from University High School. I don't know his name. He was a right-hander, threw hard, and when Strawberry came up for the first time in the first inning, I guess he batted third. He picked ball 1. Pat had gone up to join the scouts. He would join the scouts at the cage. He comes scurrying back. All I remember, how the pipers on the beach when the waves are coming in and they come scurrying, away. He comes scurrying back to me and he says, "They like the way he took the pitch. They like the way he took the pitch." And so we watched the game, and Strawberry wound up getting a couple of hits and stole a base with a beautiful pop-up slide, professional sliding. Remember that, guys? People used to slide feet first. Really, I know it's hard for you kids to understand that, but people used to slide feet first, which is the safest way and the best way. But anyway, we watched the game and we saw Daryl Strawberry and together and only Pat Williams. I don't think any other general manager is calling me up to say, "You want to go see Pat Williams? Or you go to see Daryl Strawberry?"
No. Why didn't he get back into baseball?
I think he wanted to at the end. They really had a dream of putting together a major league franchise in Orlando, and he was actually still working on that till the day he died, right, Bob?
Yes, he was. His last wish and dream was getting Major League Baseball in Orlando. When they had a minor league, I forget, he did have a connection, Dick, in one of their minor league teams at one point. I know, but because it was baseball. Listen, we would have these conversations. Here's a game we would play. We'd pick a surname, Phil, and we each of us, how many guys named Phil can you name in baseball history? And we'd have a competition, and he just loved everything about baseball, and yet he made his life and fame and fortune, if you will, in basketball. But he would have preferred to do it in baseball.
Well, Bob, that's similar to you.
Well, I wasn't going to personalize it, but yes, if you had asked me at age 20, would you rather be a baseball writer or a basketball writer? And I would have said baseball, because that was my first love. I love basketball. And I played basketball much better than I ever played baseball. But baseball was in my blood.
Right.
And,
so you had that in common.
As it turned out, a baseball writing job is not a job. It's a lifestyle. And I did it for 1 year in '77, and I liked it. I was ready to do it again, but it was a very different way of life. And
it's a grind. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Dick, why were you? And it also speaks to the age of when you were working. In today's age, it's very difficult to become friends with the enemy.
Yeah.
Right. It's a whole different ball game. No pun intended. What did you have in common with Pat? Why did you become so close to him?
I think we both loved evaluating college talent and in terms of players who had a chance to become stars at the next level up. The one thing that Pat Williams did when he was the general manager of the Sixers, I think he hired a brilliant coaching staff when he had Billy Cunningham and Chuck Daly and Jack McMahon. And Jack McMahon was maybe the best talent evaluator I was ever around, Bob. He discovered Mo Cheeks, which is one of Bob's favorite. He really was the first person that discovered Charles Barkley back when Barkley was 280 pounds. And he discovered a player who never played for the Sixers. We were in Indianapolis. He says to me, let's go to Terre Haute tonight. And the first time I'd seen Larry Bird play. And Bird got 41 against Illinois State and Jeff Wilkins that night. And I said, oh, my God, this kid's the real deal. And he had already been drafted by Boston, so Boston had his rights. But I still remember at the end of the year, right around the draft, going up to Bob and saying, Bob, this guy is going to change your life. And the next year, the Celtics won 60.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is the gospel truth, Gary. At that time, I was already infatuated with Bird.
Well, you had seen him with Jason Stark and Mike Madden.
Yeah, right. I had exactly right. But Dick liked him even more. He absolutely he saw it. He saw it from the beginning, and he was ahead of the pack on that regard. No question.
How would Pat have done? Say Pat is 27 years old and running a team today. Does he do it any differently, Bob? I'll start with you.
It's all, I don't know. First of all, it's all about analytics now. That whole world has changed, and every sport's infested with it. Soccer now coming to grips with it. And however they can. Everybody's come to grips with it. Hockey's had to come to grips with it. They're all analytics driven. I'm not saying that he would have resisted. He wasn't, but he's a people guy. I mean, I just don't think he would have flourished in this regard at all. He wouldn't have been appreciated the way he was in those days. I don't think.
Dick, what do you think?
I think Pat was old school in the fact that he wanted to be able to look at a player and determine A, how they would fit in with the team, and B, how well they would do with a given team. I mean, I would have never guessed on Maurice Cheeks. He played for an 8-20 team at West Texas State. He's a Chicago kid who struggled to get a scholarship out of high school and winds up in the Hall of Fame. I mean, Bob pushed for him to go in the Hall of Fame for a long while. I remember.
You're certainly right.
I mean, look, that team that won and had four players who wound up in the Hall of Fame: Moses, Julius, Bobby Jones, and Mo.
What about as far as and Dick, I'll start with you on this one. What about as far as the relationship with the media? Because that's the big difference I see.
I think it was different, Gary, back then because there wasn't so much confrontation and animosity between the people who covered the teams and both the players and the coaches. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact we actually traveled together on the road. I mean, you didn't have players traveling on private jets, staying at the Ritz. I mean, we'd get the bus with the team to the to the games. We would fly in the same plane. And the irony of the whole situation is back then, they would give the first class seats to the veterans. The rookies and the coaches would all stay in the back. And in Philly, I mean, Jack McMahon would read his books and the rest, and Al Domenico and Billy Cunningham and Chuck Daly would play pinochle. But you got to know these guys personally, and there was a level of respect between you and the majority of players because you were all in this together. We hadn't reached the magic bird crossing yet. And we certainly hadn't reached the Michael Jordan era where the Bulls actually became bigger than the league that they played in.
It was a giant fraternity, and I'll give you a perfect
really was.
One time, the Celtics were flying to the coast, and there wasn't even a direct flight. They changed. I'm with the party. We're changing planes in Chicago, and we got a pretty good hefty layover. And we're walking down. We're going to go to the bar, and we're walking down the corridor, and a whole bunch of tall people were coming the other way at us. And it happens to be the Phoenix Suns who were going the other way, and they had time to kill. So now we all pile into the bar, teams, coaches, trainers, etc., writers, and it's like a fraternity meeting as we're all the Celtics and Suns are socializing at O'Hare Airport. I don't think anybody today could even begin to wrap his or her head around that on what the league was like in those days.
I'll tell you the other thing that Gary, is the fact that papers back then actually had money to travel.
Right.
And we were all over. I must have seen the year I covered the Sixers, Julius's first 5 years. I must have seen at least 120 games. I covered all of the Lakers Celtics games in the 80s.
Right.
And you'd cover the Sixers, and when they lost, you'd move to Boston. I mean, there were years I thought I had been to Boston so many times I could vote. I mean, it was just
he and crazy. I famously, we think it's famous to us, covered playoffs in '79. There were three, from Washington to San Antonio to and eventually out to Seattle. Yeah. And we opened up a hotel in San Antonio, we think, and boy, we hung out for like
we were living huge back then, Bob.
Oh, no, that was. Oh, I always say, hey, I'll say it again. Gary's heard it; he's going to hear it again. I am so glad I did it when I did it, and where I did it.
It was the golden era of sports writing, particularly on the East Coast with Philly, Boston, and New York. I mean, and we had. I mean, I guess Dallas had money and LA had money.
But it wasn't the
same. We were
city.
kind of the PM news cycle for Knight Ridder, so we had more money than we knew how to spend. Right. And I spent a lot of money, by the way.
Well, I don't know if you know, Dick, but I had the pleasure of having Bob and Dan Shaughnessy on, and we did a 90-minute.
That's great.
90-minute career retrospective, and we just went through the 80s. And I'm sure it was the same thing in Philadelphia. The 80s into the 90s, the Globe, the Philly papers, the Times, the Post. I mean, you guys lived it. It was the heyday. And that's when we started to see all your faces on TV.
And most of my best friends were in other cities because you'd be on the road so often, you build up enormous friendships with people in other cities. And I think Bob and I bonded because his dad used to be the assistant athletic director at Villanova.
Right.
And he actually got to the Pluster before I did.
I beat him there. That's a big thing in our business. Because this is the ultimate basketball guru right here, Mr. Weiss. And he was weaned on the Palestra, but so was I.
So were you. Well, I felt that was the connection when I was looking at your bios. Okay, now let's get to Pat Williams, the humanitarian. Bob and I were talking about it the other night. I still have the Sports Illustrated picture in my mind at the pool. So according to what I've read, 19 kids, 14 were adopted. Okay.
Well, first of all, he was a staunch Christian man. He was a man of faith. And I think it's all stemmed from him thinking that it was the right thing to do to take care of these kids, to help.
And they all lived at his house in Orlando.
International, or somehow, some way, yeah. I just said in his obit they talk about that the food bill was $1,500 a week.
That's correct. And the amazing thing is the kids were from all over, Bob.
Oh yeah, they were international.
Oh yeah,
he had an international family.
Yeah, and his own kids, and his own Jimmy, his oldest.
Yeah,
who's in the sport. Who's he
with
now?
The one that most of us met first.
Yeah, but I remember that Pat announced his birth over the draft, on the squawk box of the conference call, and that the Bulls had a new draftee, young James Williams. So yeah, that was circa 1970 that he announced over the squawk box that he had.
But why did he do it? But why did he do it? How did he do it? I mean,
we don't know how would I know how he did it?
I would say this. I think he thought it would save his first marriage.
Yeah.
I honestly do.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
I think that he believed that family was a bonding situation. Yeah. I mean, he was married. His first wife was, I don't know, was she Miss Illinois, or she was certainly good looking enough to Miss Illinois. She sang the national anthem at the Bulls game. Isn't that how we met her? And I really liked her. I was surprised. It was when they got divorced. It was front page news in the Orlando paper.
Oh, I can imagine. Because there's notoriety as with that time when it was so well known that he had all these kids, and there's nobody like him, and of course he's a pillar of sports industry in Orlando. And I'm shocked if it weren't.
He never really forgot his roots, though. He still would come back to Philadelphia every year to do the MC job for the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky enough when I got inducted, he was actually doing it still, which is great. I loved seeing him whenever I could.
Me too.
Well, guys, Mike, go ahead, Bob.
He was still doing, now he was diagnosed with melanoma, myelinoma, whatever, not melanoma, a cancer in 2011. So he's been battling that for the last 13 years. And yet he worked through it as much as he could. He's still doing his radio. By the way, among other things, talk radio. And of course, he was a wonderful talk radio host in sports. You can imagine. And I did from my final time was June 19th. I was on his show, and so that was my last conversation with Pat. But he had me on, I guess, and I was always thrilled to hear from his producer that Pat would like to talk to me. It'd be great. So,
Gary, he used to refer to Bob as Sir Robert Ryan.
Oh, we all do. We all do.
And he would tell me directly, in the second person, it would be Roberto. He used to
that's true.
He used to call me Roberto. So,
gentlemen, it's been great talking to you. Do you have any final thoughts, Dick, on a life well lived?
I miss him. I will miss him. I felt a little bit of a void when I heard about this. I knew he had been sick. He had pneumonia and was in intensive care in the hospital in Orlando. But you never think, some guys you think are just always going to be around, and when they're gone, you realize just how much institutional knowledge is left with them.
Well, I too am going to miss him, and I want to now. I got to find somebody to play baseball trivia with.
Oh,
Guys, thank you very much. A life well lived, Pat Williams, baseball fan, friend of Dick Weiss and Roberto Ryan, and also one of the greats in the NBA, one of the great personalities. I'm fortunate I had a chance to meet him. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network. Pick more, pick less with Prize Picks. Gentlemen, condolences, and thank you for joining us.